Lesson 1.2, multiplying complex numbers. Put the date up there if you want to. When you're multiplying complex numbers, we need to start back with the previous lesson that we know the definition of I is that it equals the square root of -1. So if that's what I is, then we need to know what I squared is, because when we're multiplying, we know that sometimes we get square terms. So let's think about this. If I were to take I and square it, and then the property says if I do one thing to one side of an equation, I have to balance it by doing the other thing. Same thing to the other side. So I'm going to have the square root of -1, and I'm going to square it as well. So I've kept the equation the same because I've squared both sides. All right, so then this would become I squared. What happens with a square and a square root? They are inverse properties of each other, so they cancel out, and we're left with the inside, which is -1. So I squared is equal to -1. You have to remember this. Have to remember this. Okay, I squared is -1. So our directions say to simplify each expression to, remember it goes A, the real part, plus the imaginary part. That's called the complex form. Number 1, I see a binomial or two terms times a binomial. So what do? We FOIL this bad boy. Okay, remember it stands for first times first. That'd be -5 times 9, -45. Outer would be the two farthest away. That'd be -5 times -7i. That would be positive 35i. Inners, positive 3i times 9 would be positive 27i. And then last would be the positive 3i times the -7i, which would be -21. I times I is that I squared piece. Okay, so then what you do from there is the two middle terms need to get combined since they're like terms. So remember, back to FOILing, we can multiply things that are not like terms, but we can't add or subtract things that are not like terms. 35 plus 27 would be 62i. And then here's the part where the I squared equaling -1 comes in. So we're going to replace that with a -1. So this would be -21, and then this was times I squared, so we're going to plug in times -1. And a negative times a negative makes it positive. Okay, and then all we need to do from here is combine our real parts. They're like terms now. -45 plus 21 would be -24 plus 62i. And that's it. See how it's in A plus BI form? All right, number 2. Remember that when we have a binomial with a squared on the outside, what that's really saying is that it's this times itself again. So then we're just doing the same thing and we're going to FOIL. You can try this one by yourself if you want to. Okay, as long as I did my math right, I got -65 minus 72i. If you have any questions on that, please ask me.